When it comes to DIY retirement plans, you have a ton of different options when it comes to software providers. But there is a problem I see cropping up over and over again, and that's once you go through and fill out all the information, you get to the end, you start flipping through the analysis and the reports and the charts, and you can feel a bit overwhelmed. So that's why today I'm going to share the 8 metrics you really ought to know about your retirement from these software packages as a way to get unstuck and feel a little bit more confident about your situation. Hey, my name is Zach. I make these videos to help retirees. I'm an hourly financial planner and I work at Baird FP. Number 1 is your retirement expenses. You might say, well, Zach, isn't that a bit basic? We went through the budgeting process. We know the number. It might be $8, $10, $15, $20,000 a month. I would argue that's not enough. You need to slice it another couple of ways. The first would be really looking at the difference between your baseline expenses and your discretionary expenses, because this is going to make a huge difference in how secure your retirement actually is. Really, the closer you are to 100% of your expenses being non-discretionary, you're going to have a lot more risk and possibly even need to account for that within your overall asset allocation. Now, this is surprisingly difficult to figure out because in early retirement, there are a number of one-time expenses. Things like new cars, a bathroom, remodel, and a cruise up the Rhine River in summer. It's important to keep in mind that all of these to some extent are discretionary, and it's really important to figure out in an annualized sense, what does that number actually look like? Number 2 goes hand in hand with expenses, but it's your income, how you're going to actually pay for these things. A couple of the big ways to break it down. One would be income that you're going to receive no matter what. And then 2 would be income that is tied in some way to the markets or that is inflation adjusted. And again, the higher the percentage of your income that is secured and tied to inflation, the more flexibility you're going to have in your overall retirement plan and asset allocation when you get to deciding on your portfolio. Number 3 cascades from number 1 and number 2, but that's the number of years of cash in short-term investments you have on hand to fund your living expenses should the market experience a pretty challenging environment. Think 2008 or worse. Having an actual set number of years that you can know for sure, hey, no matter what, I'm going to be able to live on this cash and not have to sell assets when they're down in a bear market. It's a really freeing feeling and one that inspires a lot of confidence in retirees. Number 4 isn't really so much of a number, but it is the idea that your investment portfolio is aligned with your investment philosophy. It kind of ties into number 3 a little bit in just being able to withstand market volatility. But this idea that you are really aligned and can explain your portfolio to someone else makes a huge difference when we have difficult times in the market and you have to make decisions about what you're going to do with the portfolio. I find that when there is misalignment here, the likelihood of making a significant investing mistake goes up exponentially. 5th is understanding your current deferred tax liability. Basically, when we look at our balance sheet with all of the pre-tax numbers on it, especially for a lot of you out there, you have very large 401k and IRA balances, really with an inflated sense of what those accounts actually hold. Because Uncle Sam, he's co-owner in those 401ks, if they're traditional, and IRAs with you because you've deferred those taxes. When you pull them out, you will have to pay those at the end of the year. So it gives us sometimes an inflated sense of what we actually own. So my thinking is seeing a balance sheet net of the deferred taxes is actually beneficial because it gives you a better sense of what you actually own and what the portfolio could support on a net basis. So 6 has to do all with tax rates. really wanting to understand what is your current marginal tax bracket, and then running scenarios to see what is your marginal tax bracket going to be at the time that required minimum distributions are going to force you to take money out of those 401ks and IRAs and other pre-tax accounts. So this is pretty hard depending on your age, right? If you're 60 and your RMD isn't for another 15 years, a lot can happen, so it's difficult. But it is important to model out some different scenarios. So maybe look at, okay, if our spending stays about what we projected at and the market does above average or below average, what does that look like? And then, keep adjusting those variables to try and get a sense of, if tax rates stay the same, where are we at? Is it a problem that we need to be looking at doing Roth conversions sooner than later? So 7, related to that, is taking a look at what is your children's tax situation today and projected. I find that a lot of my clients are concerned about this with the new rules. They have to withdraw money from pre-tax accounts 10 years after your parents pass away. You inherit the assets at that point. If there's a few $1,000,000 in there, if there's only, especially 1 or 2 kids, is that going to mess up their tax situation a lot for that next 10 years? I find people are pretty split on this. They're either like, hey, that means that they're making a lot of money, they can figure it out, or it's like, whoa, I don't want them to have to pay that much tax. Is there any way we can plan for that and do something different about that? So it is important to recognize that and see, hey, maybe if the children are in different tax scenarios, is there a way that we can still divide the assets equally, but from a family tax expense picture, is there any way that we can direct certain assets to one child and then, other assets to another child, just depending on their tax circumstance? And then finally, I think the big one to model out, this is a cloud that hangs over most people in this stage of life because they're dealing with aging parents, and it's actually a huge drag on a ton of people that I talk to. But this idea of long-term care insurance, how much does it cost? Is it going to chew through all these assets at the end of life? Do I have enough? Will I end up in a state facility? That would be not a good situation. But what does that actually look like? Is there a real risk of that? Can I self-insure? Or do I need to look at a policy, even though they are not very good value these days? Would it provide value for me in having that peace of mind? So that's another metric to look at. All right, guys, I hope this was helpful. We'll catch you later. Bye.